Check, check, check one, check two.
Welcome. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for talking to me, Cynthia. It's been a few months since our last conversation, and so much has gone on, and I'd love to just catch up. So thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ken. I love talking with you. I love your passion for the topic and just the way you keep moving everything forward. So really appreciate
you have that. You have to. So I moved from Georgia back to Tampa in July, so I didn't post a lot. But what I have put together, I tried to patch a few things back from Howdy Mikowski and a few other conversations that I had with my friend MJ. And so I brought some of those forward to the channel, and I'm not getting a lot of views, which is fine. I'm not curious how that works. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to dive in, which you're perfect for, because there are a lot of people who are stuck in kind of that soul trap land. And they're just stuck with negativity, or they don't want to be, but they kind of are.
Yeah.
Based on how life has gotten around them. And what I love about talking to you is it's like, you know, there's two ends of the spectrum. And I think people could choose which to explore, which to like live in reality. But I want to explore the reality that everything is positive, and those things are what I want to focus on, because I want to manifest those things, or I want to create those things.
So this is what I love about you. I love how you just go into these areas, and I love how you explore them. You don't have blinders, or like I can only go this far, or taboos.
Well, I think we have a choice. I mean, I really do. I think we have a choice whether to explore them, and I'm not gonna sour on someone who's exploring that, because we each have our individual journeys of how to get there, right? Yes. But there's nothing wrong with that. What I think is incorrect to do, and I'll phrase it like that, would be to just explore one and not the other one, or just to be set in that way. Because what it does is it sets you up for the possibility that if we are creating our own reality, and I believe that, and you believe that, if we are doing that, then exploring one is just shutting the other one off. So you have to be open.
And I've been getting emails, comments, people contacting me specifically about not exactly this, but really close to this. What they're asking about is, what about family, neighbors, people, loved ones who look like they're going down that dead end road that looks like it may peter out? It's the whole idea that, it's like the Hopi prophecy rock, if you want to look at that, Dolores Cannon, if you want to look at that. There are lots of ways to look at it, but whichever way you look at it, it's like, what about the soul trap people? Are we just walking away from them? What are we doing here?
Well, they're exploring their own journey is the way I look at it. And so I really like listening to people who I vibe with, and not just because I agree with them or because that's what I want to explore, but because what resonates with different people in their times of life will help them find inspiration or find motivation. So for me right now, and it's been a little while, I've kind of gone back and forth to who I watch on YouTube, but I really resonate with the message that Jason Brashears has about creating your own reality in your informed field. And I want to explore that to the fullest, because if we are really creating our own reality, if that's a possibility, then why would we do anything else? Why would we become a victim? Like no one really knows, but the things that happen to me, the synchronicities that happen to me, I guess is the best way to call them, or the manifestations, whatever that might be. Those things happen when I believe that I want to see things. And then I'm like, holy crap, that just happened. And I'm like, the art of Wu Wei. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that completely. I'm sure you are.
Yes.
But I just watched a video of synchronicity of not trying, and the art of not trying, I think, is actually what it means. And those things that happen when you kind of like, it's almost like a Tai Chi thing. My wife says, she's like, oh, you're talking about Tai Chi. And I'm like, well, sort of. Like, it's a push, and then it's a physics, it comes back to you, right? So it's like if you're in a wave and you push the wave away and then you pull your hands back, it's not the fact that you're pulling the waves, but here come the waves. Here comes the water, here comes the stream. So I visualize it like that when you use action and you push, the energy will come back to you as you pull away and as you surrender and as you let go.
That's a great example. I've studied martial arts for decades, and that's something that is taught in the class where you have a partner. It's a really fun exercise. It's like a game that anyone can play. You don't even have to be a martial artist, where you just basically, the key is get kind of centered. So you don't want to be pushed or so that you step or fall over. You don't want to take a step forward or back. You don't want to move your feet. So how do you do that if someone is able to touch your hands? They're not able to grab you, but they can sort of clap your hands. And so it's this very interesting way to get a deeper sense of stability within oneself and how to respond quickly, but smoothly and without being knocked off balance. Fascinating exercise.
That's exactly, I was waiting for a pause. That's exactly correct. It is being balanced. And it's the same way that we perceive reality, right? I mean, we need to be balanced. We need to be open. We need to be observing. We need to be interacting with it. And it is the balance of life. There is suffering in life, and you can choose to be consumed by the suffering, or you can say, you can phrase it however way you want it to be about, you need sunlight and water to grow, right? You need both. And I don't think I would be here, which is the whole reason I don't believe in the soul trap mentality. I think is more aligned the words I'm looking to use. The mentality of it is because I wouldn't be here in the state that I'm in if I didn't have some suffering, if I didn't have some hardship, and it didn't force me into a certain area to do things in my life. You can't go through life and you can't get to where you want to be by sitting on your back floating on the water. There's certain action you have to take. And I think a lot of suffering is actually done internally. It's what we do to ourselves.
Well,
I'm not disregarding suffering, but
some of it seems like it comes in from the outside. I want to give some voice, to the people who feel like they're in that soul trap, because I've been getting some insights recently, which I don't think I had before, but now I'm starting to receive much more empathy for what that feels like and why they would say that they're in that. I mean, they might not say it's a soul trap, but that's how they're feeling. And part of it, they would say they're trying, they'd say they're making an effort, but they've always had bad luck in some cases. Okay, and this is very interesting information, because to me, I start to recognize they didn't have people praying with them and for them on their behalf, basically bolstering their energy field unbeknownst to them, because we're social animals and we do benefit from being held in that state of love and safety, with the consciousness of others. It does make a big positive difference. So that's piece one. And puzzle piece number two that really became an aha moment for me this last week is that when people feel like they're in a soul trap, on the outside, to some of us, it might look like they're sort of caught up in basically what you might call as the 7 deadly sins or the Buddhist torments. In other words, it looks like they're caught up in, like a construct, a belief system of lack, or it feels like, to those who believe in demons, it feels like the mentality has been negatively impacted in some pretty egregious ways that are quite destructive and can create a downward cycling feeling of exactly being trapped. And I think this is fascinating because now I'm starting to see the cage. It's like, okay, if there's a soul trap, what's the cage? That was my question. The answer, and then this week the answer came through, like, look at this. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I see it. I see that whether the soul trap might be greed or envy or whatever it might be, that's what I mean by the 7 deadly sins. It can be an inadvertent prison of sorts, where the individual being afflicted, rather than questioning these beliefs, because all beliefs can be questioned, or you can just go into stillness of them. Yeah, or you can stop your mind if you meditate, just stop all thought, and then you're free of it. But for those who don't become free, they're caught in that looks like a trap.
Misery loves company, energy.
They've got the bars. They're trapped, they're inside this little box. And then I could see, like, that's how it's happening. And it's happening socially. It's being foisted on people with some governments. And I'm not going to go into details, but you know what I mean. There's been a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So that was a huge insight on my part. And I recognize this is why it can look like it's a soul trap. This is why it can feel like, hey, look, these bars are real. And to the people who are in there, if they don't have the ability to turn off all beliefs, which is a skill set that you can practice, like martial arts, it's doable. Or if they don't have some way to get there and they didn't have anyone giving them that safe and loved beginning and foundation, then it can be very challenging. So I'm feeling empathy for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say that most suffering, I believe, is internal, I think it's because we have to talk about, our sovereignty, about how we accept things and how we
Right.
allow them to manifest in us, not as actions, but as emotions. And when you accept, or when you believe that is the mentality that you keep, it is very hard to break free of that. And I'm not sitting here saying that I know all the answers. I certainly don't. But as a type A personality, all my life, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I was absolutely a victim. I only saw the things that happened to me. Somebody cut me off. Of course they cut me off. Somebody rear-ended my car. Of course they rear-ended my car. My insurance went up. Of course it went up. Like, I fully understand that. But what I want people who are watching this to understand is that until you, and I don't know, this is the answer, but for me, the mentality was I had to break free of that. I had to break free of the intent. I had to
Yes.
break free of everything that I thought I was doing. So we do these cycles every single day. We get up, we go to work, we have our coffee, we might go to the gym. Like, we have these cycles. And for us to break free of what we are trapped in, which could be a mental prison, or it could be external, or both, to break free of that, we have to break free of our patterns and the things
Right.
that we do, because that is a cycle. And if this is some kind of a simulation or a construct, or whatever you believe, there's a God, there's a demiurge, whatever you believe. If you believe that demiurge has you stuck in patterns, the only way for you to break free of that pattern is to break free of the emotions that are attached to those things, and to also break free of the actions that you're currently doing every single day.
Right.
And when you
And
start seeing those synchronicities, you start going, holy crap, I really was, creating some of this.
yeah, that's such a good point that you're raising there. And I think it's important for people who might still feel, hey, the soul trap's real. Look at the genocide in the world. Look at the killing. Look at the, horrors. Okay, there, all that exists. Yes. So we're not denying that. We're not saying like that isn't real. That does happen. But what we're really saying, I love the way you're putting it, is that freedom, that Wu Wei experience of remarkable miracles occurring, that's only possible when you free yourself from the trap on the inside. One of the best books that I've seen, like from someone who really was living in a hellish experience, was Viktor Frankl. And he wrote a book, which I think you would love, talking about how he achieved within himself this funny I said medical, I meant to say miracle mindedness.
It is a medical miracle.
Actually,
when
yes.
your mindedness changes. Absolutely.
I'm sort of glad I said that, because it was not what I meant to say. But he was noticing that if he only had a few little crumbs to eat for the whole day, he would treat it mentally differently, and then he'd experience it differently. And then the positivity he was bringing changed everything. And he was able to witness on the inside of a prison camp scenario, a literal living hell prison camp. I mean, it really was prison planet for him. I think that's someone to listen to. That's someone who went through this, changed himself from the inside. So it's not just someone fortunate like you and me talking about these little problems that we've had. I mean, I went through long COVID. I've nearly died a few times, but still, it's nothing like what a lot of people are going through.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize too that, we all have our own issues. Like, we all have our own day-to-day things that affect us. I'm not here saying that I was born on third base. I was not. I've struggled. I've had to fight and battle in those things, and those things have hardened me and make maybe the person that I am. But I think looking back upon them, we do have control over our sovereignty of how we want to remember how we got here. Like, I can either say, man, I'm just exhausted. I've been pushed and I've been prodded my entire life, and I mean, I'm here or whatever. Or I can say, man, those things really have made me remember some of the, and I really don't remember some of the bad times. I've had a lot of them, medically, physically, autoimmune issues. I've had a lot of them. I lost both my parents at a relatively young age. So that there are some things, but I don't look back upon anything that happened to me and say, oh, that was horrible. I look back upon me and say, thank you for the experiences that I had before them. And,
Yes.
and I'm thankful to have had that in my life. And, that I could perspectualize that, where I'm grateful and I have gratitude and I have love for the way that I know that if I don't control my body that way, I'm in trouble.
Yes.
And I think that people have to take accountability over that. The cymatics of water obviously is a big scientific, provable conclusion that what you tell yourself actually affects your surroundings and how your body will react to that. So no matter whether you think this is a simulation or you think this is, an objective reality or subjective reality, whatever it is, those things kind of prove to you that what you tell yourself and how you feel about the things that have happened to you, how your story is told to yourself, actually will affect how you feel, how you believe, how you react, what you see. All these things are extremely empowering. And if you don't understand that, you are in a prison, because knowledge is the power that we need to get out of it. And that faith is only half of that power.
Right. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that too. Those are very good points. So I love this idea of, because I know you had Howie on the show talking about the soul trap. So this is sort of the other side of it from a different perspective.
Yep. And I also think that you do have to explore every aspect of what your belief system is, because I couldn't get to my belief system if I didn't explore some of that. I would always be thinking, well, what if? Oh, maybe not.
Right.
Or, and I do have a lot of similar thoughts to what Howdy says and what that means, but I don't extrapolate the ancient Gnostic texts the same way that they do. And I can perspectualize them differently. And I'm not here to tell anyone they're right or wrong. I'm here to create my own journey. But again, if I'm leaving the option open of what this is or how this works, I'm going to have to create myself, because the only thing that I know is how I feel and the way I react to things. So I'm going to choose that every time at this point.
This is such a good way to do it too. Just each day, start the day with some startup intention or affirmation, just a focus of attention for the day. That's why I like to start the day by asking, how good can it get? Really centering in that, just, finding that sort of footing, that foundational stance, so that if I get pushed or pulled, I'm still steady there. And I think that's
Absolutely
really good.
How do you do that every day? So that was one of the topics that I had, is that how do you practice creating or manifesting your bubbles daily? So you start with meditation and you start with a mantra, or how do you do it?
Well, I guess I have a real sense of energy. So I start by feeling energy, what's going on. And, in the last 10, 12, actually 20 years, it's been strange energies ramping up. We're going through a very interesting time on the planet right now.
Sure.
So for those of us who are energy sensitive, oh my gosh. So I'll feel that and then just feel where things are. And then I can hopefully connect with a very centered sense of grounding myself, which is to the planet, to the cosmos, and to this core sense of my purpose and what I'm living for, which is love. Just knowing what you're living for, that it is love, that it's in alignment with, for me, how good can it get for everyone, not just myself. That would not be very complete. How good can it get? That would just be like heaven for one person, and that's not really heaven.
And that's a good perspective, is that when you're saying how good can it get, my saying is, watch this. Like, you can give me the bad energy and I'm going to do that work. I guess that's very new age or whatever you want to call it. But if you're feeling the energy and you're an empathetic being, can you transform that energy? The first law of thermodynamics. Can I transfer that energy into something that I want, that I wish, that I'm going to see, to make that like a very powerful belief almost?
I do a lot of that transformation work subconsciously. So when I'm first checking in, I'm feeling what those energies are. I'm seeking that feeling of being very centered. So if I get pushed or pulled, I'm still really feeling that blissed out, how good can it get vibe. But if I'm not, then I'll take time just feeling, what's the message? Is there a message here? Or is there something that needs clearing? So I'm very interactive with the energies that I'm feeling when I wake up. That's me as a sort of an energy intuitive being. That's I think most of us are subconsciously creating all the time. So I'm tuning into that undercurrent of what's happening. Sometimes it can seem overwhelming, and if that's the case, then I'll take that concern that I might be feeling, like, boy, we got an overwhelmingly weird vibe going on the planet. So I'll just sort of march on up to higher level, like up that infinite stairway to heaven, take it up to the top and just say, okay, I've got concerns, and then come back. It always works. I always feel blissed out, like, okay, everything's fine at that level. Not sure how or why, because of the news that I've seen today, but I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to ground and center on that rather than the reports that I'm hearing or what people are saying. So, there's, in this day and age, there's just a lot of chaos. And if you study chaos theory, then you know self-organizing systems thrive in a chaotic environment.
Yep.
That's good. That's good news.
That's good practice, right?
Very good news. Yeah. So this is the sort of the theory and the logic behind the daily practice for me.
I like the analogy, as we're talking about energy and rebalancing and feeling. I like the analogy. You could use either baseball analogy or like a trampoline analogy. When you're being pulled down, when you jumped up on a trampoline and you're coming down, the force is down, but quickly that can make you jump quite a bit higher if you can recenter yourself and grab your balance. Or the other analogy that came to my mind was, if you want to hit a baseball far, it's very hard to throw it up yourself and hit it far. I need the energy to come at me before I can change it and hit it farther, because I'm using that energy that's coming in to get pushed out. So those are just some of the things that come to my mind when you're speaking about energy and recentering yourself. You're accepting it the same way that my advice for a soul trap person would be, when you pass away, to accept your faults, accept and forgive yourself, which is good practice anyway. Yeah. But if you're met with, let's call them archons or whoever's up there trying to manipulate people, and they say, oh, you didn't do this right, or you didn't do that right, and you go, it's okay, I forgive myself. What can they say to you? Go back down and do it again? No, I'm okay. I'll take door number 2. Thank you very much. And in that way, the soul trap kind of gets flipped a little bit, because I accept what I have done to make me into the person that I am, or to be on the journey that I want to become a different person, or a better person, or a more powerful person, a more balanced person. And you say, thank you. And that's the way I try to live my life every day. I don't know if you ever heard of the concept of actually, I don't know who said it to me, but it was, I think I heard it on a YouTube video, but it said basically every day we die, and every morning we are reborn in reincarnation. And every day is a new day. It's a new life.
It is.
And I think that is very important for our sleep cycle and for our mentality, that every day you wake up, and you're saying might be, how good can it get every day?
Yes,
and I'm saying, what can I create today? Like, okay, yesterday was done. The science states that, and many, I'm not going to quote who it was or how it's stated, but science states that we don't learn anything in the moment. We learn through reflection, and we learn through sleep, and balancing the things that we've done to actually create a storage space where we are new every single day that we go to sleep. So I like to use those analogies of actual science to implement them into what I'm thinking, to say, okay, yesterday happened, all those things that happened, I'm not going to process them right this second. I'll let that go, and I'll process them the next day and create the energy that I want.
That's good. I like that idea with my big thing is levels of conscious agency. And I recognize that in what you're talking about with the scientific idea that you don't learn things in a given moment. You'll need those, what I would call levels of conscious agency, or like in Iliism, which is an ancient practice of writing about yourself in a journal in third person. So it'd be like, Cynthia woke up today. Cynthia asked, how good can it get? She had some conversations with Ken and others, and got, and so I'd be describing myself from like outside of time. And what I've done is
the I am. It's the I am, because you're not your hand, you're not your head, your nose. You are you. But this is just a perspective of what you're perceiving.
Is a first step in what I would call the practice of acknowledging these levels of conscious agency. We have neurons in the head, in the brain, of course, neurons in the heart, neurons in the gut. But how many of us are consciously, sentiently aware of what's going on? How well aligned is your head with your heart, with your gut? And when you tune into that, and then you start noticing, I'm so much more than the physical body. That's almost then it becomes like, whoa. So how many levels are there? And that's a great question. And how many levels can we be conscious of? And who are we really? This is the real heart of everything when it comes to reality. It's us as the observer, and which level of observation are we making? And what's going on with that? And from there, when you have that very solid stance, and you know who you are as the observer, then you know who you are in the lucid dream or between lifetimes. When you're dead, you can face any authority figure. Exactly. And you won't be taking any guff from anyone, because you'll have a very strong, centered sensation of who you really are, and it's unshakable. Yes, it's unshakable at that point. Yeah.
It's just the level of I don't know that it's necessarily arrogance, but it's just confidence and belief in that things are the way they're supposed to be for you to learn and experience, and just I guess perspectualize that. I was talking to my friend MJ like 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about deja vu and the feeling of that. And I said, I was with him about 2.5 years ago with another friend, and we were having a spiritual conversation like this. And we were outside in New Orleans out of our Airbnb, and we were having this conversation, and all of a sudden I drifted away. I was gone, but I was the one speaking. And I said, I had this like for 30 seconds, I was watching myself talk, and I had no idea what I was actually like thinking about saying, but I was listening to myself speak, and I was outside of my body, and I was like, holy shit, that's what is this? Is this deja vu, or what is that experience that I just experienced? And so I don't know if you've ever had that experience before.
Oh yeah.
But perspective, absolutely. Can you talk about that for a little bit? Because I've not heard anyone say that before about deja vu.
Okay, well, for me, what you're describing reminds me, maybe it's not exactly the same, but I've had similar experiences where this idea of levels of conscious agency. So if I'm working with a client, for example, and it's a way to access information that I know at higher levels of myself outside of linear time, right? So if I need to get an answer outside of what I know right now, but it's important for what I'm doing with the client, then I will go to a higher level of my conscious agency. So I'm raising my hand above my head. So, and this is symbolic, but it's also representative. So if you look at the chakras as heart center is like 4-dimensional consciousness, 4th chakra, throat is 5th, third eye is 6th, crown is 7th. But it's possible to go a little bit above that. When I do that, then I'm totally able to do what you're talking about. And it's really interesting because I'll be able to observe what's happening. And also Kundalini energy, when people experience that, which I have, and I'm a mentor and a guide for people who've gone through Kundalini awakening. That experience is very, very much one of observing yourself.
Have you had that happen to you before? Have you felt that flood
yes.
of gamma or whatever that is?
Yes, yes. And it was extraordinary, and it took years to process for me. And there's almost a checklist of things that are typical Kundalini experiences. When I talk to people who are clients, they'll say things like, I've never told anyone this. This is so mortifying. It's so shocking. It's horrifying. This is what's happening. Is this normal? And I said, it's normal for Kundalini. So.
I'd love to speak about Kundalini, but you just touched upon a topic before we're going to come right back to that. You touched about a topic of being outside of yourself in terms of your consciousness, your perspective, or your chakras potentially being the culprit of how that transpires. The near-death experience and the out-of-body experience is very similar with your perspective, being outside of your actual avatar body or outside of this mind or whatever that might be. I asked you before we started rolling here about Anthony Peake and quantum immortality.
Yes.
Couldn't we, because I had this thought, and it's very hard for me to formulate my thoughts into actual words, because there's no real words for it. But if we can step back and say that we can access consciousness outside of our mind that has nothing to do with our body. For instance, when somebody goes under the knife and they're accessing conversations in another realm, not even the same doctor's room, like maybe at their house, and people say things and they come out of this surgery or coma and they can repeat things that were said. And they're like, how did you know that? So
yes.
If we can say that we are not our minds, we have an essence that can transmute our bodies and our avatars, wouldn't that then prove that we are immortal?
Yes.
Because that's a perspective in consciousness that's not attached to our body, correct?
Right. That's a good logical process you're using there. I think that you're making a clear case for it. And you brought up Anthony Peake. I want to just do a shout out there. He's written a number of excellent books, and he's got a theory. I don't know if he calls it quantum immortality, but he calls it cheating the ferryman.
Mm-hmm. Do you know Anthony Peake by any chance?
Yes. Well, not in person. I haven't had the opportunity yet to meet him in person, but I'm a big fan of his books. I love the book he wrote about Philip K. Dick. I think it's the best biography on that person. And he's done some absolutely excellent work on, thinking about reality, time, and consciousness. So just hats off to Anthony for all the work he's still working. He's still
doing it. And if he's watching, he's on my list this year to talk to, because I listen to him speak, and he says, I do the science. And I go, I don't read any books. I don't do any science. I do only observation and being a reality researcher, I come to the same exact conclusions that he does, aside from perhaps the Groundhog's Day experience. But I have had real experiences that happened before they happened. And so I'll tell the story real quick. I think I might have told you last time, but I was playing golf about 3.5 years ago, and I hit the ball into the around this lake, and I had earphones on, and I was all into my, meditational, practice, breathing, whatever, to see how it affected how I played or how I viewed how I played. Mm-hmm. And I was jogging across the lake because I hit a bad shot, and I had my head up in the air, and all of a sudden I looked down as I'm running, and I'm like, just look down. And I see this 12-foot alligator with like 3 foot from me. And I'm going, and I was like, the chances of me stopping right there are like zero. There's no way. And then I could almost feel my body like in a struggle, like fighting for its like existence in life. And although nothing happened, the gator didn't move. I have no factual information that I actually died there or whatever. Like I can't pull that back into that situation. But years prior to that, me and my wife were flying on an airplane, and I had the same experience, and it was shaking and rocking, and it was storming outside. And I'm like, have you ever thought about like, if we died, would people outside of this plane think that we died? Maybe what if we landed like perceptually, and we just kept living our lives in our bubbles of reality, right? And everyone else saw on the news the plane crashed, and right. We're like, why is he acting weird? Why, so our realities would go on forever, right? That's my quantum immortality stories.
That did happen to me. Yeah. And I do record reports, firsthand reports from people around the world that are reporting similar things. Yes. But I had it happen to me in real life where I nearly died. I had pneumonia in the winter of 2016, went into like past Christmas and into January. And I was realizing I'm dancing with death here. I can barely breathe. It's like, I think this is about it. So, but I do what I do when that happens, because it happens. You might think that's odd, but there have been many times I felt like I've just about died. And now I've got a whole routine down, like, okay, here we go. So that thing about
do you have a checklist?
Basically,
am I still, okay, my finger is I'm still breathing.
No, I know I'm alive. I can tell that part, but I also know I'm about to die, and I'm okay with that. But what I do is I just go up the stairway to heaven, go talk to the big guy, the source, the creator, oneness, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's quite real. This consciousness is quite real. And I say, okay, looks like I'm about to die. So let's just do that thing that we do. Let's do the vote, because that's to me what happens next. Because I'm a target. I know I'm a target. I'm waking up people. That makes me, it's like there's a target on my back. A lot of people don't want to be woken up. And so it's almost hit the snooze button. And when they do that, it's like, man, it looks like I'm going to die again. What's the popular vote? If it's the end, if it's that's it for me, fine, make it so. And if it's not, I just wait for the vote. And in that case, 2016, huge, overwhelming vote. Yay, stay. And I just look at God and say, okay, make it so, because I'm dying otherwise. So I'm counting on
your reality that proves that there's a benevolent God, and it's maybe not when you say target, I go, maybe it's not target on your back, because if he's letting you come back, it's not a target, right? So,
but it's up to me to make that conversation. Otherwise, this is where it gets very interesting after this, because I told you.
Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So then I make a recovery. I tell my parents, my husband, my daughters, like I just about died, my sister, I tell everybody. Only the closest people in my life, nobody else. That's important, because then give it like a year or so. And I got an email out of the left field, out of the blue, someone I'd never heard from, Steve Boucher from Canada. And he said, you don't know me, but this is going to sound probably really weird, and I apologize, but I just want to let you know that I'm so glad you're alive, because I saw on your Facebook, or he didn't say that at first. He said, I just heard you had died, and I'm glad you're alive. And so I was immediately fascinated, and I just write back to him like, that's fine with me. I'd love to hear more, but without telling him anything. I then asked him, tell me, how did you find out? What was going on? All the details, please. And I don't feel bad about this at all. I'm really happy to hear from you. So then he responded with all the details that matched. He said, I heard about it on Facebook. Your husband posted a little post, like, sorry to announce that Cynthia, after some long illness, she's passed away. And, so it's a long cause of death, long illness. How it was announced? Facebook, by my husband. So that was the first report. I have a newsletter. So of course, knowing me, the next thing I do is I share with my newsletter folks, like, guess what? At least one person noticed I passed away. Anybody else out there also noticed this? Please contact me. And they did. I heard a woman from Denmark named Steen, and she told me that she'd heard about my passing away through Rupert Sheldrake. Another person told me that they'd heard about it because a tribute video went up by Moneybags on the Moneybag 73 YouTube channel. Yeah. And so people were saying different ways that they would have heard about it. And it was really interesting. So I love it because it's what it feels like to be on the inside and getting that opportunity to then.
You're immortal. Congratulations.
Well, you can say it that way. But to me, it just dovetails with some of the physics reports that are showing. There's no such thing as objective reality. These bubbles of reality are the truth. It's called Wigner bubbles in physics. And so, I'll be writing about this. I've got a book coming out this year. I don't know when.
Wow. Okay.
Here it is. It's going to be, this is the author's proof. So it needs, I'm still working on the editing, and it looks finished.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Great.
So it's going to talk about this, exactly what I'm telling you now, about this alive again experience and being inside of that and how that worked out, what's going on. It's, so that way I can go into some more detail. But so many people experience this, and they've been sharing their firsthand reports over 25 years with me on the Reality Shifters website. Usually there's not the opportunity to get all that feedback. But when you said, like, you've been inside of it, so it's quantum immortality, we all have access to it. And it gives us that idea that what we started talking about today. You're not in a prison. You're not in a soul trap. We have the ability from the inside to set ourselves free from, these negative constructs, do our own version of going to the highest level of love that we can contemplate and break ourselves free from that. Now, it doesn't mean, I wouldn't say it means I live forever. I don't expect to do that. And
I think it's possible that our consciousness does, or our perspective might.
Absolutely.
And my friend, talking to MJ a few weeks, like 2 weeks ago, said the same thing. He's like, "So what do you think?" And I go, "Well, I don't know." I go, "I've for almost forever, I thought I was never going to die. Like, I didn't think that was going to happen, right?" And then you go, "Well, how's that going to happen?" I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe I just turned like 85 and all of a sudden aging and Benjamin Button happens, or I get whisked off to Mars with Elon and there's no aging there. Like, I don't know how it's going to happen." But like the belief system, I don't need to connect those dots. I'm just perceiving and living and looking at these things, and maybe, just maybe, the belief that that's going to happen will connect those dots somewhere in the universe or somewhere in my bubbles of reality, that if I didn't have that belief system, then I would be doing something else, right? Like you have to have some kind of I call it a paradigm now, where I had this idea a few weeks ago that there's this paradigm above this level of reality. And the reason why people are allowed to suffer, and again, if you don't believe, I'm sorry, I'm just telling you my theory, is that when you reach out past your point of creation, when we are told we're going to enter this reality construct, we sign this, or we agree to this construct and this level of suffering or this level of whatever. And when you breach that paradigm, when you breach those levels, you can say, that's it, I'm done. And then your reality will either shift or you'll be pulled out. And that's what I believe happens with suffering. And my experience, that kind of leads to some of this, the world that we live in is kind of crazy. It's kind of, sometimes it's horrible, but like a gazelle in an alligator's mouth or in a lion's mouth or whatever it might be, you don't see that. You don't see the level of suffering there, right? You see them either wince, or they go numb, or they're gone. And I see that in older people too, that have passed away in front of me. I don't have that many experiences, but I've seen it happen where you can see the person at peace, right? They go away. They're suffering, and all of a sudden they're gone. And you're like, where the heck did that, like, why is it so peaceful to have someone pass away in this realm? It doesn't make any sense unless there's some kind of a paradigm or a parameter, and you breach that parameter, and then boom, you're gone. Like, I didn't consent to this, so I'm out of here. And I think that what happened to me was going through some of this suffering that I went through a few years ago with health. it was never at a certain level, but mentally it was at a certain level. And I said, I'm done. I don't want any more to do with this. I was very emotional. I was crying. I said, I'm done. And all of a sudden, here comes Kundalini or whatever that was. And I was driving in my car and I felt this huge wave of what Joe Dispenza would call gamma. And I mean, I felt like there was nothing in me except for love and energy. I mean, I felt absolutely incredible. And I'm tears of joy. And I'm driving in my car and I was like, don't move. Don't do nothing. And of course, when that happens, it's gone almost. And I'm like, now I'm chasing that. I'm like, what was that? Like the 1.3 trillions of volts in our cells that we have in our bodies. We're like atomic bombs with energy, and that's flowing through us. So when we talk about Kundalini, that was my experience with Kundalini energy, and I don't know what the heck it was, but I mean, from that moment of my suffering, my parameter breach, where I said, I'm out, get me out of here. I'm done. I don't want to be here. I'm not feeling this anymore. When that happened, my life had completely changed. I mean, things that you would believe them, things that manifested, they appeared. Cable box appeared after disappeared for 6 months, and it appeared on my dryer, like out of like thin air. And I'm like, who put that there? I was looking for it. I documented it. So things have happened like that, where during COVID, actually, I'll tell the story for the first time. Because I don't want to get myself in trouble. But during COVID, I went for an EIDL loan, and it's a business loan. I have a small business, and then I was doing it, and it wasn't doing very well. So there are a lot of stories surrounding that in the legislature and things like that involved in my story. But I was on the computer. I'm asking for a loan, and it says, "Are you an officer in your own company?" And I said, "You couldn't be." So I wasn't going to be fraudulent. I didn't want to get in trouble, go to jail. Like I didn't know what was going on. So I just said, no, I just left it. I hit the X button. I'm done. I guess I'm not getting that. So here comes about a week later, I get a phone call. Oh, your EIDL loan is approved. I need to go in there into the link and click the button. I'm like, but I said, but I can't because of this. She says, don't worry, just click the link. This is some lady from I never known. I don't actually get my information necessarily because my application was not complete. I was on like the third page. It wasn't even any information. So click the link, click the button. The next day I have 30 grand in my account. I go, it's that easy. 2 days later, I'm doing COVID stuff. And again, can't complete the application, hit the X button, nothing happens. 2 days later, I get like a way to go card with like $1,200 in it. I swear to God. Or whoever's up there is looking out. But these are like 4 or 5 things. There's another story too. I won't talk about it because it might get me in trouble. But again, free money. I did nothing. I literally didn't do the application, and here it comes. And I'm going, this is after my Kundalini experience. So yes. I have things showing up in my house. I had an autoimmune issue that was family related. And this is my last story for a second, because I'm rambling, but this is how passionate I am about my belief system. Yes. Like, I can't even make stories up like this. I get a ding dong at my doorbell after I have a lot of joint problems and lupus and things like that. So ding dong at doorbell at the package from Amazon, has my name on it. I open it up. It's called a BioWave. It's like a pulse, electronic pulse, like a TENS machine almost, but I didn't even know what it was. Open up the box. I'm like, oh, what is this? Somebody sent me this. This is pretty cool. So has my name on it, my return address. So from me to me, I didn't order it. I go through Amazon. It doesn't exist. I don't even know what it is. So I Google it. It's $599.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, okay, thanks. So these are things that happen that I didn't do. I didn't control. I can physically prove that I didn't do any of these things. And yet here they are, just appearing in my reality after I had this experience of my parameter breach. So I have my own theories, but I'm still working on them. I'm open to anything. But these are the things that happen to me that I go, what's going on? Like what is, and I asked my wife, like, what is going on? Phases of the moon. The moon's top is covered, like about first week of January, the moon was covered. And I go, what is this? And she's like, I don't know. I go, let's look up phases of the moon on YouTube. Here you go. You got left and right crescents, waxing crescent, all this other stuff. That's not a phase of the moon. What is going on over here? So I'll leave all the stories on the table.
Now, when you say it wasn't a phase of the moon, what do you mean covered moon? What are you talking
Okay,
about
so the
exactly?
moon, like the first week of January, the moon
Yeah.
looked like this normally, right?
Yeah.
So the moon was literally covered on top like that
Okay.
the entire night. It wasn't clouds. It was nothing. It was just like this, and it went through the sky. And I'm like, I've never seen the top. Okay, so what world do we live in that has the top of the moon
Now that
covered?
came up in our conference, our IMEC conference. That was a big topic, and
The Cheshire Cat moon.
yeah, that's the name
This
of
was the
it.
top of the moon covered, though. I was like, how can light possibly blanket the top of the moon? So
When you say that, but it looks like the Cheshire Smile when you cover the lamp like that. That's what you're talking
yeah,
about.
but it was
So it's different
the
than the
top was
Cheshire.
covered. So it was like the entire moon was showing except for the top third going left to right. So it wasn't like a reflection this way. It wasn't a reflection that way. It was literally like covered, like something was covering it, like it was some kind of a landmass on top of the moon. But it was like that the whole night. It wasn't a reflection. And the next night was the same thing. And I'm like, what phase of the moon is this?
So you're saying it's not that when you say what phase, you mean that the position of because a lot of people, yeah, we talked about that we're used to seeing the crescent moon like on one side, the other side,
right?
But not like this,
right? The Cheshire Cat's different too, but yeah, absolutely same thing. And I know Chris and Asha talked about that too. Yep. So, but it was another phase of the moon that you just look at it and you're like, how is that possible? Like how can I know how it's possible? Because the moon is its own luminary source. I mean, if you don't think that way, just take a look for a while. But under what spectrum can the moon be looking like that? I guess is the way I would not understand.
Yeah, it's odd that for all these hundreds of years, or as long as we've been observing the moon, it's definitely had the phases that we're familiar with from the full moon. Yeah, the phases, quarter moon, it's like waxing and waning. And what we're noticing is that there's this sort of it looks like a curved edge to that, to the dark part. And people would say, well, this is the Earth getting in the way of the the sun's reflection. Like you were saying, it's not just reflection, right? Is what you're talking about.
Well, the funniest ones are the ones that are, if you look, and again, I look at the moon a lot because I'm like, how does that make that reflection? But I'll try to put an example in. But I'm on the East Coast, so the sun rises in the east. So the sun, right before sunrise, you'll see like the moon will be like just above the landmass, and you're going, hold on a second. The sun's below the earth. How can it reflect through the earth and have the light on the moon? Like that doesn't make any sense. The earth is between the sun and the moon, and we're in the middle of it. There's there cannot be a full moon on that because the sun is below the earth. So anyway, just trying to perspectualize that, and I'm going, I just don't understand. I know the moon is the sun's far away, but how big is the earth to not shield the moon? That is a fourth of the size of the earth, supposedly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what's going on with the Cheshire moon I mean, that is very weird. And as far as the rest of this, I don't know. I've also noticed that where the sun comes up seems different because I've lived in the same house for over 30 years and it's been moving. Sunrise has moved south and sunset has moved north noticeably. We're talking more than 10 degrees, maybe 15. And so, I mean, the only other people I saw reporting that were some Inuit Indians going, up in Alaska or, Canada, way up north. And they brought the matter to the United Nations or something many years ago. But that's about the same time I was noticing it. And it hasn't, I mean, there was a huge shift and I'd love to see people.
Is it still shifting?
It's still like, well, it hasn't moved all at once, but it sure did move noticeably for me. So because I remember where the sun used to rise. I have lived in the same place,
the same spot,
for decades. Yeah,
they've actually reported England now has northern lights. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Yeah,
the northern lights has actually come up in England now, and they're like, well, this is odd. Like it's not ever been this far south. So
we had them in California too, Oregon. So they've been moving to the southern latitudes. Our Earth's geomagnetic field has been changing. So it's possible that, I know that's the magnetic north, the magnetic south.
Right.
They're going through a geomagnetic excursion, which
Okay,
means
so you're a physicist. I have to ask this question because
they're
it
wandering.
sounds obvious to me, but I'm not that familiar. And no matter what I look at and watch, it's going to be something related to like flat Earth or whatever. But a compass only reads towards the north, correct? The magnetic is that right? The pin only points towards magnetic north, correct?
Yeah, that's the way our compasses are set up.
Okay, so so what is magnetic south? How is that? What electric force is that? The polarity of the north? So directionally, but that only works on like a globe model. And I'm not a flat earther, but there's some things going on here that I don't understand. So magnetic south, does that exist? Is there
It's the other side of the compass. So they usually set it up so it's pointing one way, but north is one way, south would be the other direction typically. But what's interesting right now is the South Pole and North Pole, they're both moving, and they're kind of moving together, but kind of weird. I mean, and there's just a huge reduction in the geomagnetic field right now, which is allowing for some of this solar, flux that's coming through so we get these northern lights at southern latitudes.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, what do you think the northern lights are? I mean, I'm assuming that you are leaning on the side of conventional science and that there is a North Pole and a South Pole on a ball, correct? Or on a globe-ish thing. You believe in simulation too, correct?
Well, from the dream state, I believe in simulation beyond the computer model. Computers are so anything that we hook onto, like technology, it's not going to last. So it's not going to be good enough. We need something. So we need a simulation theory that's not anchoring it into like a computer. It's like,
right.
I'd prefer to call it like a dream, because that way it won't be
fluid.
Yesterday's. Yeah, it's going to be yesterday's old newspaper. Otherwise.
I guess where I was going is I've heard a lot of the electric universe theories and the toroidal fields, and I mean, there's been tons of stuff on inner Earth and things like that. So as far as the paradigm of the realms, how does that work on the model that we currently think is going on? Meaning that if the magnetic north and south are being moved, it's really not south being moved, it's really north. So once you move north, south automatically moves. I mean, there doesn't have to be a magnetic south, correct?
They're kind of moving differently right now, which is quite odd. The whole thing is odd, because they seem like they're not moving in a straight line. They seem like they're going kind of quickly, but they're going a little differently too. And the geomagnetic field numbers are not being reported by our government agencies as regularly as I would expect them to be, especially considering that they're moving so much. So I'm not saying it's a cover up, but I would like to see where the numbers are. I feel like the last thing they talked about is the geomagnetic field on the Earth is dropping rapidly. And that was like 20 years ago. And then silence, no mention of it. At the same time, it affects people's moods. We know this, that when we don't have the same magnetism, people get anxious, they get angry for no reason. They become irrational.
Is that attributed to the Schumann resonance and the resonant frequencies of our bodies and how we're attuned, or what do you think that's attributed to?
Humans need both. We need the human resonance to be, we're used to the 7.8 frequency that was anticipated and predicted by Schumann.
Is it 7.8, 9.8?
7.8 is the reality. It was predicted to be 7.5 back in 1970. Was it 72? No, 1952. It was predicted mathematically, and it's basically the prediction came from the fact that we've got this ionosphere where there's an excitation of some of the molecules and so forth that are in the Earth's atmosphere, the very outer layers that are getting bombarded with UV radiation from the sun. And so they become quite electrical. And then you've got electricity at the Earth's surface with all that water plus the Earth itself. And what's set up in between is this perfect kind of a bounce speedway around the planet. And so what Schumann did is he estimated the size of the planet and what these waves would do, these extremely low frequency ELF waves. And so he mathematically worked out an equation, calculated it should be a frequency that he expected to see and observe of 7.5 hertz. And it was pretty darn close to that. That's the primary. 7.8 is what it was measured at back in 1952. but you know what's been happening since around the year 2011, 2012? It's been the human resonance has been it's been
raised.
it's been raising. Yeah, it's been spiking. And then if you look at the connection with the human brainwave patterns, because you were mentioning before the theta, the delta, we referenced it briefly, obliquely. There's a tremendous connection there with our deep when we go into sleep and when we start waking up. Right around there is that 7.8. That's right. It's
dream
almost
state.
It's as if humans were synchronized with the dream state of the earth herself, this human resonance. Between that and the magnetic field, scientists have observed that humans go kind of crazy if you put them underground in a bunker and you remove the magnetic field, or if you remove that Schumann 7.8 resonance. People just go nuts. They were doing experiments. So if they send astronauts into space, can they make it without the Earth's protective magnetic field, without the Earth's Schumann resonance? Big answer is no. And so what they need to do for any of these spaceships is build in a magnetic field to match what the Earth has, to build in the Schumann resonance.
Very interesting. I don't know. I could have sworn it was 9.8. I'm not going to say it's a Mandela effect for me, because I don't believe in the objectivity of the Mandela effect necessarily. Like I'm open to it, but some people are like, well, that's a Mandela effect for me. And I'm like, wait a minute, Oscar Mayer, unless they covered it up when I was a kid with the song, was never Meyer. Sing the song. Like, I don't know, how do you sing the song with Meyer? It was always Mayer.
I remember
Oscar
that
Mayer
too.
has OSCA, that's the song, Mayer. So, but I'm not ruling it out. It just, to me, it seems like a lot of these marketing things have actually come about to reinforce that it may have changed. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense to you. It's like, I see the commercials now for Skechers all the time, and I see commercials for things that I know were not the way they were, right? And I'm like, did they just do that just to say this is for the new people, like to pay attention to that? And the old people are like Mandela affected, and they're just wigged out. Like, what is going on? It's almost like the NPC argument, or the empty vessel, non-player character, whatever that might be. We talked about that briefly, about how the reaction is, and you're like, who's in there? Like, how do you not pay attention to this stuff? Is it a God, or is somebody in charge of waking people up? Are they just not on the same vibrational level? Why do you think that, we didn't talk about this last time, but why do you think certain people go into that glossy, I can't take this kind of thing? You just can't convince them the Mandela effect is real, and I can't understand how people would not trust their discernment. You know what I mean? It's very difficult for me to, as strong a personality as I am, I can absolutely admit when I'm wrong. But you're not going to tell me that Ed McMahon didn't work for Posers Clearinghouse. You're not going to tell me, Ready Whip didn't have an H in it. You're not going to tell me that Field of Dreams, that I've seen 100 times, didn't say if you build it, they will come. You're never going to tell me that.
Right.
I'm not getting off that ever. No
I
matter
know.
what you tell me.
Well, some people ask questions and want to know the answers, and that's you. And some people don't. And so that's one huge dividing line right there. And so that's like a lot of my neighbors, friends, family. They just do not want to know about this. And it's not bad. It's just different. Well, you and I want to know. It's like I've been aching all my life to know the true nature of reality.
Do you think that they can't see them? Do you think that they just can't accept it, or they don't want to know, or they just can't see it? Because, like, I've heard this, all these synchronicities in my life just add up, and they just come to my mind when I see them. So I'm some kind of colorblind. I've been tested when I was younger, but I can see colors, and I joke with my wife that I can see more colors than she can, because I can see the differences in certain colors. And then I'm like, well, how is that purple but that one's blue? And you're like, well, it's just it is. And I heard the some kind of a Native American, story about they couldn't see the color blue. So when they showed them the blue, they were like, I don't see anything. Like, what are you looking at? And that was like a really botched version of your reality, right? Like, if we can't see them, are they existing to everyone, or can they just not see them?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's on the periphery. So it's something that people hear us talking about it, and these Mandela effects, and and if it's not something that they're asking questions about, they don't really actively want to know, then they're just going to keep it on the periphery until such time I've seen my family members and friends and neighbors and so forth get to that point where, because I've talked about it, it's on their periphery. They know, like Cynthia's a
and
bit,
now they start to see it.
She's a bit odd. But then when something is needed, when they feel like, wait a minute, either because it does happen to them and it's unshakable, like this just happened, or they find a usefulness for something I've talked about, like meditation, then suddenly they want to talk about that. Like that does make a huge difference. It brings calmness when you're feeling stressed out, like, oh, that really works. Or in the case of, I had a family member, my sister, who asked me to do that thing I do when our dishwasher broke down at, it was a holiday dinner, and she and I were doing the dishes. There would have been 2 or 3 loads of dishes in the dishwasher, except the dishwasher made a terrible noise, like clank. And then there was a smell of burning oil, and, it wasn't running. So you could hear it wasn't running. You heard this, you could smell the fumes. You heard the broken noise. And my sister just looked horrified, and she said, "Can you do that thing you do?" Now, what that thing I do is where there's a reality in one form or shape, and it's possible to heal things. Now, so my sister then knew on the periphery, it's not something I talk about with my family. They usually aren't that interested, but if it's on the periphery of their awareness and suddenly they need it, then they will talk to us about it. So that's where and that story with the dishwasher, it did work.
I was going to say, you have to tell us if it worked. You can't leave it hanging.
I told her how to do it. I said, well, first I laughed because I couldn't believe it.
So how do you do it? Because this is very
it's
people
practical.
Are going to say, wait a minute, you dropped the ball on that one. No.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so let's go through it. So the first thing is, she said it to me, and I was so surprised that she brought it up, that it brought joy to my heart, and I laughed. Just joyful, like a childlike laughter, like ha ha, like, oh, that's amazing. Gotcha. I couldn't believe she said that. And I said, you know what? This is great. I'm laughing. This is the right spirit to bring, exactly the right spirit. This is it. You want lightheartedness, joy, just that feeling of,
anything can happen, joy.
Yeah,
childlike, let's go to the moon, joy.
Childlike wonder. I said, this is perfect. I said, now here, I'll just go through the steps. Let's do this together. I said, now we know what we've heard and saw and smelled and everything. You know what? Number one, let's ignore all that. I'm just going to open the door to it as if we had just loaded it. Never mind that we pushed the button. Never mind. Forget that. We're just going to feel how much we love this dishwasher. And I'm just going to close my mind and just feel in my heart. I know it sounds weird, but how much I love this dishwasher. I'm going to imagine it running, and that memory of it, the sound it makes when it's happy and rumbling along. I'll just be picturing that in my mind while I feel so much love for it. I'm just going to do that silently. You can join me. Here we go. So I just, because I've now opened the door to the dishwasher, pretending we just loaded it. Never mind that we forget everything that just happened. Forget that. As if like erase. That didn't happen. Just feeling our love and for it. And so it was feeling really good. So I just sort of bliss out it was about a minute. It doesn't take long, but what matters is feeling that heartfelt connection of just opening your heart, feeling that love. And you can do this for any situation in your life that might feel stuck or like there's no way through. Just feel your love for it. Just imagine that it's going the way you'd most like it to go. But how good can it get direction? Okay, so after about a minute of that, then I opened my eyes and I said, okay, you ready? Now what we're going to do, I'll do this. I'm just going to shut the door and I'll push the button as if for the first time, as if and that's all I did. I just opened it and then I was just shutting it. So now I'm going to push the start button, and I'm expecting and I need for this dishwasher to run. So that's what we're going to hear. So I pushed it, and sure enough, it just rumbled happily along, and voila. And that was pretty impressive because in a previous year, the previous dishwasher had broken down at a holiday dinner. So that was the other thing I didn't mention. It's like, oh God, not this again. It's like, this is the thing.
Put the ham hock back in the dishwasher. You got to be kidding me.
I know. So there's that. And there have been many times that things that in my life, like a car with a broken starter, a car out of gas, all these things, a printer that only printed green at my friend's house. I asked her, can you scan this? And she said, I can, except our scanner it makes everyone looks like Martians. So, all these things, they're just things, and you can bring love and a need. It's that alignment again, the neurons in the head, the neurons in the heart, the neurons in the gut. when you're locking in what you need, it's not selfish, it's not greedy. It's just like, I need a scanned image that looks like a human, not a Martian. No offense to Martians, but we just and then it's possible to bring in, especially when you've been through Kundalini awakening, because once you've gone through it, you can access it, and then you're just.
I can't. I'm trying. It happened one small time after that, but that was it.
It's there. So it's just give yourself permission. Sometimes there's a part of us that's a little concerned because the things that come with Kundalini would be instant manifestation of almost anything you're thinking. And so if there's a part of you that knows that, then it's like, oop, let's keep the safety brake on that one. Because unless you really have your act together so that anything you're thinking honestly is what you love and truly is what you need, if it's not all in alignment that.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's most definitely the problem for me, is that I was telling my friend again this 2 weeks ago, and I put it on there, and I'm like, I feel like I don't need it. Like I really need it. And I can't breach that. Again, it's that parameter breach that I don't want to ask for it because I don't really need it. And I'm like, I don't really want to do it. So, and that's for me, that's your intentional thing. And I'm like, no, I think I'll be okay. It's fine. Yeah. But, that's happened to me numerous times where I was like, I really need this. I need this, please. I need this. And I'm like, I don't know who I have to ask for this. Like I'm always asking my higher self to intervene. And at that struggle parameter, at that breach, here it comes, it happens. So yes. I'm glad to hear that you can do that without, maybe I'll have to convince myself that even though I don't need it, maybe I just want it, maybe I just love it, or whatever that might be, and practice that and see if that's able to make it happen.
Yes.
So, but I feel guilty to do that. I'm like, I'll be fine without it. So I'll just walk. Like a car broke down, I'll just walk. It's fine. It's no big deal. Yeah. Maybe I'll see something I'm not supposed to see, or, and those are the things that I might allow myself to be upset or frustrated for a second, but then I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? What's going to happen now? Like almost like this, how good can it get? It's going to be like, oh boy, what's going to happen now? Just pay attention, because this is going to make me look a certain direction, and I'm going to see something that I'm not supposed to see, or I didn't.
I love that. That's exactly it. And that's what I love about How Good Can It Get? Because then I'm working with these levels of conscious agency that I'm so keenly aware of, that they do exist. And I mean, very high levels of conscious agency that are giving me very direct messages sometimes. Like it's possible to get these synchronicities that line up, and you might wonder, where'd that come from? But it's this,
don't know.
It's this tremendous alignment, with these levels of.
You have to surrender to.
Yes.
That you don't have to. You don't have to connect.
I would recommend surrendering. I would recommend be humble, honor that there are these higher levels, and that we're all connected. And that
did I talk about my mantra last time with you when I was in Sedona, waking up, and I went with my wife, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And she's like, oh, now you're ready. Where were you 2 years ago when I was going through this? And I was like, well, it's a little different, but. So we were walking around the Buddhist, the wheel, and I just was listening, and I told myself, surrender, seek truth, and let go. And so now I use that for pretty much everything, as far as how I see it and what will happen. I don't have to connect dots. So I tried to put those pieces together. And so far, I mean, I don't know if I'm happier, but I seem to be more happier than I was. And I'm allowing myself to feel how it's supposed to feel when I'm in that moment, but quickly it passes. And the quicker that I can let it pass, the better that it is for my own emotional state.
That's fantastic, because then you've removed that inner resistance that most of us have, that slows us down, that blocks us. We're the ones blocking ourselves from our own healing.
Absolutely. Usually. And what's really amazing is, like, when you look back, like in a short period of time, like maybe like 2 weeks. I'll give you an example. So like maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I have a sister-in-law. My stepson is 22. His aunt. So my wife's ex, my son's biological father. So his sister works with us in this new business that we have. It's a soccer teaching business for kids. So we teach little 2-year-old, 3-year-old soccer, and she's the educator. I'm just a former player, and I don't want to necessarily get in the business to teach and do all these things. So I'm like, what do I want to do with my life? Like, helping kids, or just having them find a passion for myself and then making it work. So long story short, she's supposed to be the teacher, and she's going to do this camp for fantasy baseball camp that she's playing baseball or whatever. And it's not a negative thing about it. I wasn't aware she was doing it. So now she's not teaching. And now it's me and my wife. And I'm like, I guess I'm coaching today for like the week for like 7-8 classes. And so the mindset was, oh man, now I got to learn these lesson plans and coach. And now looking back on it 2 weeks later, I'm like, I love doing this. Like, this is like, I allowed myself to feel what I wanted to feel. And like in a short period of time, like now I have a skill and I have an enthusiasm and I have a passion for doing it that I didn't have prior. But had I been stuck on that, it would have gone really the wrong direction. And I wouldn't be in the situation that I am in now mentally. So those little things that happen to you, once you accept that you can do that, it really changes your perspective of life. And then you're like, oh, why was I thinking that wasn't a good thing? Like, it's supposed to happen for that reason. Even if it's not fate or destiny or whatever it is, like, accept it and just roll with it. And you can be upset later, I guess, is my mentality.
Yeah, good advice. Love it.
All right, what else do we have? We're talking a lot of side tangents, but it's a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Let's see. So we talked about most of these. Okay, Akashic Record, Erwin Laszlo. What are your thoughts? What did, I guess, give me because I have theory stages of what I used to think it was. Anything. The Akashic Records I thought was like some sort of a source cloud, like the internet, that we're all connected and we're all one. And now I'm not quite sure I really understand it, but I have another theory about maybe the Van Allen belt is the Akashic Record of energy. And so I'll let you speak to what you think the Akashic Record is, if it's changed for you, and then what Erwin Laszlo actually proved that the records exist scientifically.
Yeah, it's not technically my biggest area of focus, but it's fascinating. And I do acknowledge that there's this sort of to me, it feels like a morphogenic field that we tend to attribute a quality very much like the Library of Alexandria kind of stature, but held within this sort of an energy field within consciousness itself that people have access to. My own experience with it is a little bit different because that Akashic Record idea, it goes really well with, let me say what it does go well with. It goes well with past lives that are in the past. My most recent past life is in the future. So I'm laughing because and not just that, it's a future that I intentionally am feeling like my purpose of life right now is to make sure we do not go toward that past life that I just came from. It's like I explored a possible reality, lived a whole life there. I have those are my strongest past life memories, are from 500 years in our possible future. And my goal is, let's not go there. It's very odd. And so when I look at the Akashic Record model, it's extremely different from, what you would expect to find there, which would be much more in keeping with treasures from the past lives that we have. And my past life memories, if I do have them, they're not nearly as strong for the Earth history past as they are for the future, oddly. So personal, and I'm going with my own personal experience here. And so from that standpoint, it feels like I can acknowledge that the Akashic Records are quite real to a lot of people, have a lot of value, and provide the ability for people who are tuned into them to access information that otherwise might feel like it's irreparably damaged or lost, like this Library of Alexandria that I'm mentioning, like it was destroyed, records were lost. And so people who can access it anyway, they feel like, what, it's kind of like remote viewing in a sense, but to a collective consensus reality. That's the other piece of it that I have some issues with, because as I just said, my most recent past life is from a possible future. That's not like an objective, agreed upon, locked in. It's extremely nebulous. It's much more this Wigner bubble of reality thing. And so, but I like the idea of the Akashic Records. I have a lot of respect for Erwin Laszlo and the work he's done. And I think it's important for people to know that even if something is destroyed, it's still accessible, and you can get to a level of your consciousness to explore it either in a lucid dream or through remote viewing or channeling, all these different modalities for overriding this sort of a left brain bias that we tend to have, and be able to directly access the information. So I'm a supporter of it, even though my own personal experience is kind of different.
Yep. And I think that from a scientist's point of view, as these experiments go on and he's trying to prove an Akashic field exists and we can access it, I think a lot of the subjective part of that gets put into what it actually is. And I don't think it's important to what it is. I think it's more of a supernatural importance that there's a field that we can manipulate, access. We can, it's like the bubbles of reality thing. It's more important that we know that it's there than what it actually is and how it works. So I don't put a lot of stock into, the experiments necessarily of this is 100% fact, because as we've known from science is that things change. They're a little fluid as far as what they are. But just because I can see a dead body doesn't mean I can tell you how it got killed, how the guy died or whatever. The body's dead. That's the fact. I can't tell you exactly what it is or the surroundings or things like that. But let's focus on what we know, which is that there are things that we can't describe, that things that we can't know, and that it's better to keep an open mind and have theories of belief that will help guide you in your journey than just read it on a book and read the exact thing that he said it was, or that somebody says it was, because that's where we lose a little subjectivity.
Right. And it's good to keep asking questions. I think if anybody's listening along with this whole conversation today, I think you and I are both advocating for that, to ask questions and, like you said, create. So if you're creating and you're asking questions, then a lot of good can come from this. And you're right. I don't think focusing exactly on what it is or how to access it is
and how it happens too. I mean, I know you probably feel the same way, but like I believe that I can, if I'm in the right frame of mind, and that may sound really incorrect about what I'm saying, but if I'm in the right frequency or the right channeling aspect of it, I feel like I can almost manipulate what happens to me. Like I'll say, like driving down the road, and I'll be focused on a bubble and say nobody's gonna hit me, or I'm gonna be in this. It's probably a really bad analogy, but my wife's like, "Oh, pay attention, do this," and I'm like, "It's fine. It's not going to happen. I won't let it happen. Like, it's going to be this way that I intend, because I'm actually directing that part of it." Do you actually feel that you can manipulate, like I don't know about the entire experience, but like the way that things, the parameters of how they could happen?
Well, to some degree, that ties in with waking up in the morning, feeling the overall energies, what's going on. Some days are kind of like they have a totally different feel to them than others. It is like waking up in a different reality. And so just noticing that, and some realities are more fluid and more workable, and some feel like they're a little bit more like quicksand or something. There's something going on. So to some degree, yes, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I figured you definitely thought you could. Okay, so we've gotten a lot of these out. These are really good topics that we've talked about already. All right, so I guess we're going to get into two main things. So the other two will be me not telling any stories or my perspective. Can you talk about the IMEC conference that you guys had? And were there any interesting stories that happened? Were there, I know when I met Chris at the Galactic Spiritual Convention 2 years ago, he had a time dilation. Like, I want to hear good, like, do you have anything like that that somebody said they experienced or that you experienced?
Yeah, we something interesting happened early on. This conference was held in Branford, Connecticut, which is our headquarters for the IMEC, International Mandela Effect Conference, and it was our first chance to get together there in Connecticut. So we were just there for a Friday night, kind of a mixer, so to get to meet people informally before the event actually started on Saturday. And one thing that Chris noticed in the main conference room that he was sitting in, and I got a picture of him looking like really surprised, was that there are 3 clocks that were set up to be at the correct time. We were meeting at the place that Chris's NECS business operates from. So he knows these clocks. They're familiar to him. And it's important in the conference room that they show the same time. But they did not. It's like the conference is starting and already we're getting a change in time, what you might call a time shift or a time dilation. And it was represented by the 3 clocks right there. We also, I think the Friday night also, there'd been this, what do you call it? I don't know if it was what kind of celestial events sighting it was, but there was a shooting star that just really went through the atmosphere, and it was noticed around the world. But it went right over the East Coast, and that happened that night. And then we had a lot of synchronicities just with individuals just talking about things and just noticing remarkable coincidences with one another. And it just felt like it was a real gathering of people that have a lot in common. Just for one thing, we all agree that reality is not what it seems. And so even if the theories are different, it was wonderful to see that there was so much camaraderie, even and respect, even when people had different ideas, because we had one day where people were talking about religion and Mandela effects. That could get heated pretty quickly, especially given the fact that people had different opinions of why it's happening. But it still was wonderful. So it was just such a special event for all those reasons, and just getting that soul family together.
I was going to actually say that, were there any reconnections that people actually thought were reconnections? Friends that were like, we just connect, we click. I know you. Like, how do I know each other? Was there any of that going on? I'm sure there was tons of that going on.
Yeah, I felt like I have a soul daughter that was there, and that was really cool. That's Christina Antisek, and she's got Soul Spa University channel on YouTube. You can check it out.
Shout out.
Yeah. Yeah. So Christina is, and we did a short little video. So if you go to her channel, you'll see that she did some little interviews with us and talking about how she feels like I am a mother to her. And that was where we met for the first time in person in Connecticut. Yeah.
How do I spell her name? Sorry. How do I spell her name?
It's Kristina. And so I think Christina, and then look for the Soul Spa, SOUL, and then SPA University. That's the channel, and she'll cover all kinds of stuff like David Gruch and the disclosure. She'll talk about all kinds of things. Yeah, Christina.
Hey, I spelled it right. I never spell these things right when I do it quickly.
Woo, got it. Yeah, so I got to meet her, and that was super, super special. Nice. And I've met another family member that felt like a soul sister to me. And, I think so many people, just more than I can name. There was such a heart connection. And, it's the kind of thing you feel in your heart when you meet people, and you can just feel like this is so much more than just meeting for the first time.
Yeah, I was able to watch the videos. They were really good. I always enjoy listening to Chris's presentations, and I hadn't watched it in probably about 3 months now, because I watched it right when it came out almost. I was in the middle of a move and all kinds of stuff, but I don't remember what he had said, but I'll tag it in the description of the thing that popped out to me from Chris's presentation. But yeah, it was good.
Well, he talked about time cops and cymatics. He had a visual image of the cymatics, which was super cool. And he
was dressed like a time cop with his hair pulled back.
Yeah, and he was talking about the time cop rules. Very funny and beautiful. Chris is just so good at just he puts his whole heart into what he's doing. So he really brought those ideas forward.
And soul. He puts heart and soul into it.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So what's next for you? What are you working on? I know you have a book, so I didn't know that before I put the topic in there. So if you want to show that again, what it's about.
I'm expecting it should come out this year. It's awesome. Waiting. It needs the interior art finished. It needs, it's going through some final proof editing and interior design layout finalization. It's called The Mandela Effect and Its Society, Awakening from ME, that's Mandela Effect, to We. So it's like a triple entendre here. It's, from me, to we. So it's an awareness that we're working together. And I've gotten some wonderful endorsements from Dean Radin at Institute of Noetic Sciences, Jude Curvin, the author Roger Marsh.
What science is in there? I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean.
Oh yeah, this is a really cool book because it goes through a whole chapter on theories. It's got an entire chapter going through theories of the Mandela effect, whole chapter on the history of it. I don't know another book that goes through not just Fiona Broome, but before there was Fiona Broome, what was Art Bell doing with the Mandela effect? Quite a lot. The history in terms of some of the earliest known Mandela effects that have been reported. Carl Jung, and he had a Mandela effect. Just really interesting historical accounts that haven't really necessarily been covered, as well as all the current conferences, not just IMEC, but the other conferences that have also happened. Really giving a shout out and a lot of credit to some of the early authors here.
Did you put Jesus in there? I think the last time we talked, I said I thought Jesus maybe maybe the first Mandela effect.
Yeah, well,
I heard you mention that.
To me, it's very sacred. So I did not put that down, because then we're getting into a heart of something that's so sacred that I feel it feels wrong to say that. We can say it informally, but I feel like it's so much more. Like when you take it for what it really is, you could say that, and but it just didn't feel right to say, to put that
and put
in
it in a book.
Felt wrong. It felt like, okay, this book, there is a sacred book already to cover this. Let's not mess with, greatness.
Do you have the first? I think I'm sorry. Did you call it Alive Again, Dead Again, or is that Fiona?
I called it Alive Again. And so that's when Art Bell interviewed me on his Midnight in the Desert show. He was saying, some people are calling this the Mandela effect. When Nelson Mandela, for example, came back to life, what would you call it? And I said, I've been tracking this with the term alive again and calling them all reality shifts. So that's what I call it, a very specific type of Mandela effect where someone's alive again. And so that was my conversation with Art Bell.
I don't want you to change your book, but I heard that there was a girl. I don't know if it was in a comment section. Oh God, you're going to kill me. I don't remember where I saw it, but there was a girl who was in journalism school, and her college paid for her to go to South Africa to talk to Nelson Mandela in prison. And she said she canceled the trip. Have you heard this?
No.
Because he died. They canceled the trip because he died.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I don't know if that story is legit. I'm not looking to pass off misinformation, but it was in one of the videos that I saw on YouTube. It's either a comment, maybe somebody commented that said they know that he died for sure, and she had a trip canceled.
Well, I've talked to Eileen Colts, who was she did interview Nelson Mandela, and she noticed that he died, and she was a reporter she was living in England, and she was one of our conference presenters in 2020 for IMEC. Eileen Colts was interviewed by Christopher Anatra for the International Mandela Effect Conference, also in 2020. She's passed away now, but she was co-author with one of our founding members, Shane Robinson of Unbiased and On the Fence, the YouTube channel. There were 4 co-authors on that book, and Eileen Colts was the one who reached out to me to write a foreword and an endorsement for the book, which I did.
Oh, wow.
And she's the one that went to South Africa to talk to Nelson Mandela when she saw that he'd passed away. This is extremely
that's very detailed.
It's extremely relevant and applicable. So, and she
is that in the book?
Yeah, that is
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you this just popped up in my head. What do you make of, since there's another Mandela effect you just mentioned with that gentleman's name? I've heard him talk, his name, Chris Anatra. He says Anatra.
Yes.
And now it's Mandela effect that it's Anatra. What's going on with this guy? He's crazy. I'm just kidding, Chris.
Yeah, that one's, I don't think
that's a Mandela effect. Is Chris,
no,
did Chris name change?
My understanding is that Chris wants to make sure that he's pronouncing it correctly, the Italian way. He's been making a lot of trips to Europe recently.
Chris is Italian?
Yeah, he's Italian.
That's my paisan? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like Sinatra. And so I think that's where in America, Sinatra, Anatra. But then you go to Italy and you find out it's Anatra.
Yeah. I heard one of his first recap videos. He says, my name is Christopher Anatra. And I'm like, I could have sworn I heard him say it was Anatra. And I'm like, he's probably just doing both or whatever. But I said, that's a Mandela effect for me. Let me talk to this dude.
Well, it's worth following up on it. It would be interesting to see.
I'm totally messing with him. I know he pronounced it both ways for whatever reasons he wanted to. But I had something really, really weird happen to me. I am a fantasy football guru, buff, fanatic. Yeah. And I was sitting like about a little more than a month ago and watching football, and this guy's name came up, and I'm like, who the hell is this dude? And I knew who they were talking about. And I told my wife, she was sitting with me, and I go, oh no. And I'm like, oh my God, the guy's name changed. And then I Googled his name, and like Google suggested it was the same guy that I was talking about, but I knew it wasn't. And then, because it was spelled different. And then so like I'm looking through stuff. I'm like, there's no way this guy's name was that, because I am really good with names and memory and things like that. And then I texted a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, the guy that plays for the Bucks, what's his name? And he said Rashad. He goes, he's on my team. So it's Rashad, Rashad. He's on my team. I go, oh, perfect. I go, what do you think of this? And I sent him a photo of the name, and it was Rachad. And I go, I've never seen no. He goes, and then he did what everybody else does. He goes, huh, I guess I misremembered. I go, no, you spelled it right the first time. How did you get off that? And so
Right.
I'm looking on YouTube. I'm looking at all these things, looking at captions, and captions are, I mean, I spent like 20 hours in doing this.
Oh, yeah.
And it just boggles my mind that somebody's name can change.
I'm so glad you found that from
nobody
sports.
said anything.
Because we don't have that many from sports. I know these are happening everywhere. So thank you for bringing that one up.
And it literally happened within the last 2 months, because
what's the last name on this player? Rashad
White. I made a video about him. White,
Okay.
plays for the
Nice.
Bucks. He's in his second year. He went to Arizona State. Like I know all these things, not about him in particular, but like I seen him sign his name in cursive with no CHAAD on his name and everything. And I'm
like in person? Or
no, not in person. Like I've seen him on videos, like signing his autograph or whatever, or not in a specific video he's signing his name, but I saw like the cursive. In my head, I can still see it. It's RASHAD and it's in cursive. And like I'm watching, YouTubers, and I'm like, did they even notice? And then I asked Chad, and I said, Chad, you remember this guy Thomas DeLauer, and he's a very big YouTube nutrition, and I go, that's who made me go, what the hell is going on? Because I was watching this guy every day because I had autoimmune problems, and it was same with Chad. It was turmeric. And when I noticed it was now turmeric, not turmeric. I went to this guy's channel. I'm like, this guy will say turmeric. And sure as crap, the guy goes, oh, you have to be sure to add like 2 capsules of turmeric. And I was like, no, not you. What the hell just happened? So like it's one of those things that you just, I don't know what that means.
I remember the turmeric too before it turned. I'm glad it's turmeric because it sounds better than tumors, but it is odd.
The funny story is, I have another story because I have one for everything. But when I was in New York training for the soccer business, there's a guy from England there. He's the head trainer, and his name is Bob, and he's an awesome guy. And Bob has like 5 glasses of turmeric tea every day. And he says, oh, I have to have my turmeric. And I go, what did you say? And he's like, turmeric. I go, there's an R in there, Bob. And he's like, oh, I guess there is. So the last day that we're there, as I'm razzed him for like 3 days, because he doesn't understand the Mandela effect. And you tell somebody and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. So it's downstairs in New York, and upper west side of Manhattan. And you go down this sports shop, which is a soccer store. And then down in the bottom, it's a shared space, which is where we had our little training. And in the top is a coffee shop and a sports store. So anyway, on the sign, as I'm leaving that day, I didn't get a picture of it. I should have. It says turmeric, TUMERIC. And so I go, the sign is still the sign from when it was turmeric, likely, because it's probably been there for a few years. I was just guessing. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but the fact that it said turmeric on the sign with no R. And then the guy says, and it was just one of those things that I was like, this is just too coincidental. Who puts turmeric on a sign like with tea? That I would walk into that and see that.
Wow.
It was crazy. But yeah, those things, they just get me. I just laugh now. Like I would just tell someone to talk about it, and it would just, I'm over it. Like it's just it's such a funny experience, when you bring those up to people and they're just like, oh, I guess it is that. And I'm like, what is your level of discernment in your reality? Like what how can I get you off that? I'm like, hey, Bob, did you have a sister when you were younger? No, I didn't have a sister. Yeah, you did. Oh, I guess I did. Like what goes through your head that you can get somebody on that? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Well, this has been great. I think we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah,
we got through.
We did a lot.
Yeah.
So yes, if you run into Mr. Anthony Peak, let him know I need to talk to him. But yeah, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate it quite. I'm sure that the audience appreciates it too, because this is something that's hard to find out there right now with the discussion point of view on the Mandela effect and things like that.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will enjoy it. Thanks again for coming. Any last words? But when is your book coming out?
This year, 2024. I don't have anything tighter than that because I need to get the interior illustration from someone who's involved in a whole bunch of, like you went through your move and everything. So that's going on for my illustrator. So once that gets pinned, but that's okay because it's also gone to the the author proof editor. So it's going through the final editing review. So that's perfect.
Well, I have a request. I
Yes.
don't read. I read okay, but I need it on Audible.
Yeah, I'll get it there too.
Okay, great. So when you get it on Audible, text me or email me, and I will be your first one to buy
it. Awesome.
As long as I don't have to listen to Chris read it. Who's gonna read it?
Yeah, come on. I'll probably read it.
Okay, that'd be great. I think your fans would enjoy that. I'm just kidding, Chris.
Yeah.
Chris, just call me, text me.
He's traveling right now. So if you're not hearing back from him, he's traveling for a couple weeks. He'll be back. Okay. So that's what happened.
Where's he at now? Is he down in Telos again?
He's gone to I think Tahiti area, because this is a trip that was planned pre-pandemic.
Wow.
But then there was some everything got kind of crazy, and so it got canceled, postponed, and finally it's happening.
Tahiti. So, who's you in Tahiti with? The ant people?
It's like, I think Samoa, it's like Tonga down there. I don't know the details, but I know he's there with someone who's very spiritual, and it's
awesome.
Chris, he'll be checking the energy and seeing what's
going
on.
Chris finds the answers in every spot that he goes, because he certainly looks.
I saw they had an earthquake there in the area, but fortunately it was deep enough underground that it didn't create tsunamis. That hit like the day after he was due to arrive there. So hopefully everything's good. Yeah,
he'll get home safe. If he can control his reality bubble, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't perceive anything like that. So he'll be fine.
Feels good. I feel, how good can it get?
He'll be home before he knows it.
Yeah.
But thanks, Cynthia. I appreciate it. It's great talking to you. I'll post this probably. I'm just going to leave the whole thing up because I think it was great. I'll post it probably later today.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Awesome.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Bye.